In this video, we will compute z-scores and use them to compare values from different data sets. In this example, we're told that two students, John and Ali, from different high schools, wanted to find out who had the highest GPA when compared to their school. Use z-scores to determine which student had the highest GPA when compared to their school. So that means we simply need to calculate a z-score for each of these students. Let's start by calculating John's GPA. John's z-score. Okay, so for John, we're going to calculate the z-score, which means we're going to take the x value, subtract the mean, and divide by sigma. 2.85 minus 3 divided by 0.7, and we get a z-score of negative 0.21. So we calculated John's z-score. Now let's calculate Ali's z-score. We'll use the values from the second row in the table, and we get z is equal to 77 minus 80 divided by 10. You'll notice that Ali's high school uses a very different measuring system or metrics for GPA, and so it's really hard to compare the two when they're not on the same playing field. And so z-scores kind of level everything. When I do this calculation, I get that the z-score is negative 0.3. So now I want to answer the question, which student had the highest GPA when compared to their school? So we can interpret these z-scores by looking at them, and I see that John's z-score is 0.21 standard deviations below the mean of his high school. And this means 0.21 standard deviations. And Ali's is also below the mean, but it is 0.3 standard deviations below the mean. So whose GPA is better? John's is better. John's GPA is 0.21 standard deviations below the mean, which means he did better when comparing to each of their schools because it's closer to the mean, or it's not as far below the mean. Okay, so let's write this up. John's GPA is 0.21 standard deviations below the mean, whereas Ali's is 0.3 standard deviations below the mean. John's GPA is better when compared to his school. Because it is not as far below the mean as Ali's. So standardizing or creating these z-scores allows us to easily compare two completely different scales.